happy to make a start then, David, if you are. So.
Yeah, no problem at all. Well, yeah, no, thanks, Carl, for setting it up. Very happy to offer hopefully some insight. It is a little bit Barenbrug specific, but because it's mainly talking about trials that we've had ongoing. But I do think that the trials have the best interests of you guys at their root, and hopefully the results can help going forward. So, yeah, I guess sustainability, probably lots of presentations these days talking about sustainability starts by trying to define what it is. So, yeah, what does it mean to you? I guess ultimately, if we ask the question, I might get a few things back, whether that's disease tolerance, quicker establishment, faster to harvesting, could be a range of things. But probably the overriding thing is coming up with a grass seed mixture that produces a good product with lower cost of production. You've got to make the business sustainable ultimately. I guess when we're thinking about sustainability as a grass breeder, we might be thinking along slightly different lines, but hopefully coming to the same conclusion. So I want to talk a little bit about nitrogen efficiency, which we're hoping could lead to reduction in nitrogen use. Drought tolerance, clearly reducing water use. Just had that discussion about how dry and costly and time consuming that can be. And also present some information on looking at biomass, so how much leaf material grass varieties produce, and whether that can be looked at to reduce mowing costs ultimately. Disease tolerance is kind of always a focus of breeding programs. I think that's the same for Barenbrug or any other grass breeder. It's clearly an important thing. I'm not going to go into too much detail because it is so kind of ingrained in the breeding process, really. But ultimately, we're kind of looking for more stress tolerant grass for sustainable turf management moving forward. Just related in some ways, I guess. And I wanted to make a point of the fact that we are producing an awful lot of seed in the UK. For anybody buying product for us for turf production, it's very likely that the ryegrass and the slender creeper would be produced in the UK. I guess there's a little bit of a carbon footprint aspect to that as well. We actually kind of launched a sort of new concept mainly for the sort of professional sports turf market this year called Sustainable Grass Technology. So that might be something to keep an eye on and maybe something to tap into moving forward. That's the kind of logo for that. So increasing sustainability, sustainability can mean a whole range of different things. And I guess this starts, at the very onset of any breeding program. Breeders are going out into the wilds looking for interesting grasses, whether they may be on a sort of a very rural sports pitch in terms of wear tolerance. You could be looking for smooth stalk meadowgrass in the Ukraine, I think, in areas where you've got severe drought and also severe traffic. A bit closer to home, this is the east coast of Scotland on a breeder's trip last year. So looking for fine fescues here, growing naturally. Clearly that never gets a mower anywhere near it, and yet you get amazing plants, very high shoot density. This is definitely a slender creeping red fescue exposed to salt. So a whole range of sustainability angles that grass may contribute to the breeding program. And there was even one sitting on the beach. That very large plant there was hopefully might lead to something in the future. Increasingly, the breeders are looking at various aspects in the way that they screen the progeny. So, you cross something out of the wild with an existing variety, for instance, and have a look at what they produce, and putting those offspring through a range of extreme tests will help to screen and hopefully come up with varieties that are more adapted to various traits moving forward. So I think people saw this visited last year, but this is using hydroponics for a couple of things. We'd look for cold tolerance here, so having the water at a very constant low temperature, but we've also used this for looking at nitrogen efficiency. I think this particular trial is cold based on the colour of those plants. But a way of screening actually at the individual plant level, so even within a variety, you might do a screening to get the best plants within that variety or the best genetics within that variety for instance, cold tolerance. We have this set up at the breeding stations now. This is in France, but this is a rain-out shelter. So again, screening plants under intense drought conditions, usually quite a bit warmer in there as well, but finding the plants best adapted to survive prolonged periods of heat or drought, or both. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about some specific trials. One that has been conducted in the UK fairly recently with STRI in Bingley, looking at nitrogen efficiency. It was a fairly kind of complicated trial, but did come out with a fairly simple conclusion. So we looked at 8 different ryegrasses. They're all pretty well listed in the turfgrass seed booklet. So we know that they all do fairly well at Bingley. But we were looking at how they react to decreasing amounts of nitrogen. So we have 75 kilos of any year, 150 and 225. And we had those in either straight urea applications or as part of a sort of coated product. I want to focus a little more on the straight urea in this presentation. And we assessed kind of turf quality after an establishment phase over a period of 15 months. Looking at a range of things, so looking at how they look physically, but also measuring quantitatively with digital image analysis, which I'll show you, and NDVI, which is probably familiar to people. Ultimately asking the question, which ryegrass uses nitrogen most efficiently, and can some cultivars provide good quality turf with less inputs? So this is a kind of a drone image of the trial when everything has had the same amount of nitrogen at the start of the trial. So you can clearly see there's each block of 8, there are varieties that are darker than one another, but everything's looking fairly healthy in that picture. And then this kind of shows a point in time where there's clear differences between the blocks. So you can probably pick out, a darker block that's likely to be the 225 kilos of N application. And similarly, a light one is likely to be a 75. So yeah, the digital image analysis, we use a camera mounted on a box to take pictures of the turf. The only reason we use the box is so that the light conditions are constant and it doesn't matter if it's sunny day or cloudy. But what we do with the images is perhaps more interesting. So if you imagine that this is from a wear trial, this is not from this turf trial, so this is for looking at football type wear. But if you imagine that picture is made up of 16 million dots, then we have a piece of software that asks the question, is this dot green? and it does it 16 million times, and it picks out the ones that are green. So the software will tell you very accurately how much ground cover you have in that picture, which is a nice way of kind of measuring turf health, I think, in a very precise manner. So here's the results at the end of the sort of 15 months of the trial. Those are the 8 ryegrasses. This is looking at the camera box, so how much percentage cover we had. And yeah, surprise, surprise to everybody, if you increase the amount of nitrogen, you increase the turf cover, the pale green versus the dark green. But what is interesting is this variety here, which not only doesn't increase very much, but has a very high start point at 75 kilos of nitrogen. And this is looking at exactly the same data in just another way. So for the 7 varieties that are shown in dark green, they have had 150 kilos of N, whereas the Barenbrug in the pale green has only had half that, 75 kilos of N, and it's produced the same quality or better than those other 7 varieties over the course of the trial, which was a very nice finding. Same trial, just a different way of looking at the data. So this is just a visual assessment by STRI, just to show that it concurs nicely with the digital images. Same result, the same or better quality, effectively for that variety, above the other 7 with half the amount of nitrogen. So I won't read that. It just concludes what I've said pretty much. So we're going to use this as a new variety, Barenbrug. Its first sort of major chunk of production is, well, literally came off the field a few weeks ago, and so we do see this as a good ryegrass going forward, not only for sort of professional sports turf, golf, but I think for you guys as well. Different set of trials. This is looking at some of the drought stuff we do in the tent. This particular set of data comes from Italy. So yeah, just an image inside the tent. The stuff on the left is tall fescue, but the things in the middle are all ryegrasses. You can see that, you know, some of them are very badly affected, but others are doing okay in quite intense drought stress. So yeah, kind of an overview. 2 ryegrasses, 2 completely different reactions to the drought and the heat. And I guess, you know, we saw the effect of this back in 2018 and probably not far away from seeing it this year in some places. So we kind of run this trial with sort of 2 distinct stress periods. You can see, thankfully, that ryegrass will generally recover in that first phase of recovery, but the second stress sees some really significant downgrading of the sward, and in some cases decent recovery. In others, you know, it takes a little longer. But you'll see if you follow the sort of dark red line that again in this trial, the same variety, Barenbrug, has done particularly well, amongst a couple of others. And again, this is all done with digital image analysis, so an objective measurement by an independent body, in this case Land Lab. Biomass production. I think this is a particularly interesting one for turf production. Ultimately, in the UK, we have quite a different seed mix to the majority of Europe in terms of what we use for turf production. So, you know, anything between 20 or 30% ryegrass with fine fescues that we all know grow a lot slower than the ryegrass. So I think that having a ryegrass that does grow slower offers a couple of real wins. I think clearly you might not need to mow it as much, but also the balance in the sward, in the overall sward balance between ryegrass and fescue might actually be affected, and I would say positively affected, to the point where you might even be able to use more ryegrass in the sward, in the seed mix initially. So yeah, just very simple trial. You sow out strips, and each time you mow them, you weigh the clippings over the course of. I think this is over the course of 2 years, or maybe one growing season, I think. But we've done it in various locations now and have a clear picture on which ryegrasses produce the most and which produce the least. And there are big differences. 40% within ryegrass varieties. And I think intuitively you think that the fine-leafed ones are the ones that grow slower, and that is kind of true to a point. But you'll notice that Bar Gold, which is a kind of familiar old favourite for many turf growers, we've actually got varieties that look very similar to Bar Gold, but produce 25% less biomass, which is a very significant chunk. Again, Bar Priam is a good one, not quite the lowest, but very close to being. So yeah, Bar Priam, I think it's a very interesting grass for turf producers, and we do have a range of data to kind of try and back that up. But 50% less nitrogen in that turf trial with STRI. I think there's a clear direct money saving, clear direct sustainability angle with that, and probably meaning that maintaining the balance with fescue in the sward may be more easy to manage. Exceptionally good under drought. Again, an independent trial to back that up. Clear benefits on a dry year with cost of irrigation, cost of manpower, cost of diesel. And it is a low biomass producer. And again, whether that's a really significant less mowing cost, I think that needs to be tested in situ in your location under your circumstances. But I think that balance with fescue is another added benefit there. If you've got a ryegrass that's less aggressive, can more ryegrass be added initially to the seed mix, or can you produce a finer turf, etc., etc. Fair few benefits there. Thankfully, the BSPB trials that make up the turfgrass seed booklet, do echo some of these claims. If we look at detail, so Bar Priam has had one trial. It's undergoing its second trial, and will soon be on the full list. But it sits at the moment as a new cultivar, and you can see its mean score is very good, right at the top of the table. But looking in a bit more detail, that's the mean score. But you've got slow regrowth, which is an indicator, albeit not done objectively, an indicator with how fast it is to grow. So the higher the number, the slower it grows, and it is one of the slowest in the table. Red thread's very good. So yes, it doesn't require as much nitrogen, and thankfully the disease that's kind of related to that, it's very good at. So it should maintain good turf quality under a low nitrogen regime. You'll see at the end it's nice sort of mid-green colour as well. So that's kind of where we are with ryegrass, some of the trials that we've done, and what we're trying to achieve with that. But I think we need to look a little bit closer at the fescue partners as well. So yeah, as I said, we all use fine fescue to combine with ryegrass, or certainly the majority do, to produce turf. So we have strong creeping red fescue. I guess one of the main reasons that's part of the mix is its ability to produce rhizomes. But I'm sure that at the back of most people's mind, or maybe at the front, is the cost of strong creeper. And, you know, I kind of stress this point. Let's try and make it more than a bag filler. You know, yes, it's a useful grass to have in. Yes, it is cost effective. But can we get some real benefit other than its ability to produce a roll of turf? So a little bit of look at disease tolerance and drought tolerance with strong creeper. I'll present a little bit of data on that. Slenders, yeah, again, rhizomatous. I guess we're looking at quality angle with slender a bit more, so density, performance, aesthetics. Disease tolerance is a big thing with slender. It does cost more than strong, and so, you know, you have to be clear on, are you getting the benefit from having that grass in the mix? I think most people will agree that they are, but let's try and have a bit of a closer look at that. I'm always surprised how few people use chewings. I think the reason behind that is the fact that it is a tufted grass. It doesn't produce rhizomes, but it does produce a lot of thatch, which I think contributes to, you know, getting a roll of turf that holds together. Its disease tolerance is, I would argue, better than slender for the UK climate. You very rarely see dollar spot on chewings, for instance, and it's probably less susceptible to red thread as well. And it offers better spring growth. So does that contribute to maintaining a balance of fescue in the sward? You know, the ryegrass tends to romp away in the spring while the slender's not doing a lot. Can chewings help that? And we're doing increasing amounts of research on hard and sheep's fescue. Again, it's a tufted species, but I do think there's real benefits to be had. They need to be examined relative to cost, because it's usually a little bit more expensive to produce than the others. But it's definitely more drought tolerant. That I can say without hesitation. It is more drought tolerant than the other three fine fescue species. Generally more stress tolerant against a range of things. Good winter colour. You know, when a lot of turf is going out the door. So yeah, I'll just introduce a little bit of data on that as well. So this is back to Italy, back to Land Lab. And yeah, an interesting trial that occurred during 2018. So it's in the north of Italy. It is warmer than we have, but quite cold winters. So yeah, I think we can look at this data and read into it certain aspects. They had a hot, dry summer in 2018, and they saw some of the things that we saw all too often in turf fields and on golf courses that summer. So this is looking at visual quality of the various grasses during that time period, during the summer. The darker blue can be ignored. It's not a fine fescue. And hopefully a couple of things stand out. The sort of dark red line was good throughout a large proportion of the trial, but also the orange line is very different from the rest. So it's a bit of a slow starter, but actually kind of improved during the height of summer. That orange line is hard fescue, and the dark red one is a strong creeper. And that data was mirrored quite well by looking at turf cover with the camera box. I think you would see in this graph that the orange, the hard fescue, is very, very different to the red fescues in the trial. So the red fescues were a range of strong creeper, slenders, and chewings. So a very different grass that's far better under intense heat and drought. I'll show some kind of drone pictures to just show you the differences here. So you can see August 2018, and the peak of the drought. You can see quite clearly that, you know, there were plots really struggling very badly. Those are the hard fescue plots. So, you know, very, very different visual to the red fescue around them. One of the Bar Jessica, which is a strong creeper, was also hanging on quite well. I've ignored. There's a plot underneath the top yellow square. That's the dactylus. That's the variety that's not a red fescue. And then fast forward to October of the same year, and the recovery of that strong creeper by Jessica, which you can see in the data, was a lot quicker and better than some of the other red fescues. And again, the hard fescue was doing quite well. So yeah, just that's kind of what I wanted to run through, some quite recent trial data that I do think has hopefully has an influence on what you're doing. Particularly guys in the south and in the east of the country. I think that the issue of drought tolerance isn't going to go away anytime soon, and there are grasses that are available with data to back them up that may be able to help you out. So I hope that was interesting, and very happy to answer any questions.
What's the availability going to be like for 2021 for Barenbrug? Is it going to be readily available or limited availability on it?
Probably somewhere in between. But, a good chunk of it's in and is looking clean. So we certainly are wanting to make some available to turf producers. And yeah, the production from 21 harvest onwards is significantly bigger again, because we do really think we have something that can play a big role for a number of people.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer the question? There's some available.
It did, yes, indeed. So I'd get in there early, and
always.
you might have a chance.
There'll be some available.
Being that it produces less biomass and is possibly slightly slower growing, what's it like an establishment?
That's a good question. It's certainly a ryegrass, so its establishment is significantly quicker than other turfgrass species that we might be looking at. The quickest ryegrasses to establish tend to be the very pale ones that we use in Europe. It's more to do with their sort of willingness to keep growing in colder conditions. So it depends a little bit on when you sow it. If you sow it kind of during the summer, I think you probably wouldn't notice any difference. If you sowed it either early or late, you might see a difference between that and, say, something like Bar Gold.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions? No?
No more questions from me.
Okay. I think all we can do then, David, is say, thank you very much on behalf of the TGA for your time this afternoon. And we look forward to catching up again soon. And take care, everybody.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Well, perfect.